Alright, thank you for joining me and thank you so much for being here. I am Kasey, and earlier this month I did a whole video where I basically reveal how much I just adore Jackson Publick and Doc Hammer's early 2000s series The Venture Brothers. I didn't put the show on with that intent, but I loved reliving the series so much I couldn't not talk about it since we have this platform, right? So I watched the first three seasons on Netflix and finally caved and bought the DVD set of the complete series and finished it from there, rewatching every episode from season 4 onwards twice. The second time with the creator commentaries on because yes, more Venture Brothers for this fucking nerd. If you are looking for the best way to watch The Venture Brothers yourself on your televisions, if you don't want to pick up the complete DVD set and the movie like I did, Max, I know, has the entire series at the time of recording, but did you know the entire series is just on adultswim.com, presented there entirely for free? So as long as you have a browser, the complete series proper is at your fingertips. Let's get into it with the pilot, The Terrible Secret at Turtle Bay. The Venture Brothers pilot episode is amazing in quality for a pilot episode of an animated series and is equally in such rough shape because it is still a pilot and essentially a test. All the elements you'd expect from a Villain of the Week episode are there. Everything just has two less passes of scrutiny and polish, really. A fun way to see where the series started on a second watch, but if you are watching the series for the first time, maybe swing back around to this episode when you are done. Season 1, Episode 1, Dia de los Dangerous. The series premiere is a great introduction for the main cast, though. These characters are going to have a natural progression throughout the series, but you can clearly recognize the core of each personality from the beginning. The episode is about everyone putzing in Tijuana because Dr. Venture has a lecture and the Monarch comedy of tragic errors where he ends up in possession of the impossibly incompetent Venture twins Hank and Dean, with Brock just being a badass bodyguard in the background. Season 1, Episode 2, Careers in Science. This is maybe one of the most important early series episodes. Not only do these side characters come back in later seasons, but we get the first mentions of movie night. The problem light comes into play big time in Season 6. It is also just a fun situation to throw the Venture family in with some of my favorite early Venture Brothers gags and jokes. Season 1, Episode 3, Home Insecurity. The introduction to Baron Underbite. He sets up a raid on the Venture compound only for his crew to bump into the Monarchs. They set off the panic alarm and the Venture family has to hide out in the panic room from a robot the good doctor was building because of course it doesn't work right. Underbite's introduction is one of my favorites. The whole episode is just a hint at the politics that go on within the Guild of Calamitous Intent and is a great showcase for the Monarch in general. Season 1, Episode 4, The Incredible Mr. Brisby. This is one of those episodes that I kind of forget exists for some reason, despite the very recognizable character in Mr. Brisby and a few great gags. It's an episode that feels very Villain of the Week. The Doc is summoned to legally distinct Disney to clone the titular incredible themed park and animation pioneer. This is the first time I actually focused on the cloning bit, and that foreshadows the start of Season 2 really great. Season 1, Episode 5, Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Magic. Here we get more introductions. This time it's Orpheus and his daughter Trinity. Can you believe there was a time where you had to explain he was a riff on characters like Doctor Strange? Imagine having to explain that to anybody post-MCU. The crux of this episode surrounds Hank, Dean, and Brock being stuck in a fantasy machine while Dr. Venture has a first date with Dr. Orpheus. It's not the first time we bring up the mystery of the twins' mother, but it is the first time so much has been brought to it. Thus is the joys of having a machine that literally makes your fantasies reality. Season 1, Episode 6, Ghosts of Sargasso. A great episode to showcase what the series was largely sold on, fun riffs on classic Hanna-Barbera adventure cartoon tropes. Here managing to juggle both the Scooby-Doo series and standard Johnny Quest while both fake ghost pirates, just regular pirates, are bad at their jobs, I guess, and an actual ghost astronaut from Jonas Venture's time as a monster of a human being. One of the best episodes to just walk in on or catch on late TV at night because it's a perfectly recognizable setup that largely stands alone for an adventure. Season 1, Episode 7, Ice Station Impossible. Can you see how cold it is in here? Speaking of ice stations. Who's excited for more side character introductions? Finally meeting Billy Quizboy, Pete White, and Professor Impossible, probably maybe most importantly. The episode's A-plot is Doc failing at holding down a day job at a super science lab, while the B-plot focuses on Brock and the boys handling secret science formula that Professor Impossible recklessly made back in the day until the two stories just kind of intersect. I get the most fun from this episode from the Fantastic Four jokes, since that's where we primarily hang out this episode, but this is also the story that canonized the Venture Brothers into Johnny Quest's world with the B-plot. Season 1, Episode 8. Midlife Chrysalis. Brock has to retake his secret agent license exam, and the Monarch has a scheme to poison the good doctor. A great episode for breaking down the insecurities of Brock, the doctor, and the Monarch, while we get the first hints of the alternate relationship of Doctor Girlfriend and the Monarch. It's a fun episode that doesn't have any crazy ramifications story-wise, but is important to really understanding the characters, and I think that's what keeps people invested long-term in the series. Season 1, Episode 9. Are you there, God? It's me, Dean. The Monarch has the whole Venture clan in a classic death trap, but womp womp. Dean has got his testes twisted. So we take a medical timeout thanks to Guild Law to take care of the issue. A fun episode to really introduce the Guild and the laws and the rules we are going to be dealing with more significantly than the name drops the Guild has gotten in the past few episodes. The episode isn't a standout for me this season, but not a standout in this context is still pretty above average. Season 1, Episode 10. Tag Sale, You're It. Super Science Garage Sale might be one of the single best premises for an episode of any show ever, although the Super Science Fair in Eureka is also up there. It highlights Rusty's incompetency, Brock's badassery, the boys' personalities get to shine and clash, and the Monarch is just a petty little bitch in the best ways. This is also the first significant use of Henchmen 21 and 24, as real characters instead of the duo just being a bit. Oh, and Augustus St. Cloud makes a rough draft first appearance, plus I almost forgot to mention Phantom Limb. Tag Sale is a really, really big episode. Season 1, Episode 11, Past Tense. While attending an old college friend's funeral, the Doc and Brock are kidnapped along with Pete White and Baron Underwhite, since flashbacks show everyone went to school together. The main draw of this episode for me is the real introduction of the original Team Venture from when Rusty was a kid adventurer, who are brought to save the day, but ultimately it just amounts to nothing because Brock. This also might be the most gentle Jonas Venture Sr. is portrayed throughout the entire series in this episode, but this is mostly a good flashback episode to set up a bunch of origins, really. Season 1, Episode 12? The Trial of the Monarch, where both Phantom Limb and the Guild of Calamitous Intent were both introduced in earlier episodes. This is the first time they both take center stage. The Monarch is framed for a trial solely so the Guild can kidnap the prosecuting attorney. Tiny attorney. Plus, the Phantom Limb is fucking over the Monarch as a nice little bonus. The episode is important story-wise since it's setting up most of the Monarch's arc in Season 2, as well as a good showcase for how dangerous the Guild and the Phantom just can be. Season 1, Episode 13? The Return to Spider Skull Island, the Season 1 finale. On the way back from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the Doc is inexplicably pregnant with his twin brother that he ate and absorbed while he was inside his mother's womb, normal stuff. Well, the boys decide to run away from home, and the Monarch accidentally has them murdered from prison in one of television's best season endings. An episode that gives all of the main players a lot to do with some of the best series early jokes and running bits. And I guess this is a spoiler, but you're watching this video, so I don't know what you're doing here if you care about spoilers. If Rusty is a clone, then is Jonas Venture Jr. actually Rusty's twin, or the side effect of some cloning mishap that was just never caught? I.e., if the original Rusty never died, would he have also spawned a Jonas Venture Jr. at 42? And the Season 1 special, a very Venture Christmas, a quick little half episode of Venture-themed Christmas nonsense, out of sequence so the boys are not dead and the Monarch isn't in jail. That's about it. It's fun. Alright, and overall, Season 1 is a fantastic introduction to the Venture Brothers as a whole. All the characters feel like how I know they will turn out in the end of the series in essence, but it doesn't feel like we were forced to change the characters to suit the audience or the studio's notes over what Doc Hammer and Jackson Public had planned for the series' overall story. All of the stories are self-contained, but hint towards a larger narrative that ties the episodes to each other and are also laid out in a way that you might not catch on a first watch, especially if you are watching the episodes a week apart like originally intended. Also, for every joke I find unfunny, there are 7 more that are making my sides hurt laughing, so yeah. And that takes us to Season 2, Episode 1, Powerless in the Face of Death. In his perceived grief over losing his son, Rusty Venture runs away to globetrotting while Brock hunts him down. Plus, Orpheus, the necromancer, remembers his moniker. But the Doc may have already beaten him to the punch, plus the Monarch breaks out of prison to start his season-long adventure of recapturing the heart of Dr. Ex-Girlfriend. I love how this episode blends both science fiction and fantasy so matter-of-factly, plus bits from the incredible Mr. Brisby are also paid off here when we learn the true fate of the Venture twins. Season 2, Episode 2, Hate Floats. The Monarch is fresh out of prison and putting together a new enterprise with 21 and 24 who opt to enlist real-world coded street gang members. The new fluttering horde bumps into the new Venture family and end up violently kidnapping the good doctor. It is brutal and great. I love how this episode basically drops characters from The Wire into this cartoon reality, one of my favorite juxtapositions when it's played straight like in the Venture Brothers. Season 2 also is clearly moving the story forward with purpose every episode, and I love that. Season 2, Episode 3, Assassinati 911. When Brock is set on a secret mission to assassinate the head of the Office of Secret Intelligence, he leaves the Venture family in the hands of an assistant nanny and Brock's longest rival and stereotype Molotov cocktease. None of the Monarch's overarching B-plot here, but the proper introduction to hunter-gatherers and Brock's mission here have wider implications, as does Gather's transition. Part of the show that has been played both for laugh and earnestly in a way that is really hard to balance. Season 2, Episode 4, Escape from the House of Mummies, Part 2. I love when we are presented with a Part 2 without a Part 1. Genuinely, it means the episode starts with one of my favorite trope cliffhanger cliches, with the walls slowly closing in. Cue Dr. Venture getting entirely sidetracked to prove a point with magic to Dr. Orpheus regarding super science versus magic, while everyone else stresses in cutaways. Again, no Monarch, and the episode is largely self-contained, although Orpheus's master does make his debut sounding a lot like a can of beans. Season 2, Episode 5, 20 Years to Midnight. The same night, a lost video of Jonas Venture Sr. is discovered with instructions to track down parts of a MacGuffin to save the world. A giant and possibly frightening alien arrives to simply observe the night's events. Not suspicious at all. The episode also brings in a lot of side characters from the past. Jonas Venture Jr., the captain from the Ghost Pirate ship, the Impossibles. When I first saw this episode, it blew my teenage mind at the time with its Lovecraftian and nihilistic ending. The episode is treated with so much pathos and weight. When I first saw it, I thought it was at the very least a season finale, easily one of my favorite episodes in the entire series. Season 2, Episode 6, Victor Echo November. After sitting a few episodes out, the Monarch goads Phantom Limb into putting on a hit on the Venture family, while Hank and Dean just so happen to be double dating at the same restaurant as Limb and the Monarch. I know it was never planned, but I still can never believe we never saw Kim again, even in the background of Guild shenanigans. But still, it's a great episode for like all the Brockisms we get here. Season 2, Episode 7, Love Bites. Traveling home from a costume party. Team Venture does that a lot in early seasons, don't they? The X1 is brought down over Underland, and Dean is mistaken for a maiden since he was in a Princess Leia costume. You know, let antics ensue. The good Baron doesn't get a ton of time to really shine in the series, so I am happy one of his main episodes is as fun as this episode. Very phallic by the way of Caligula. Season 2, Episode 8, Fallen Arches. Orpheus has been approved for his own arch. His finding a team introduces us to the Order of the Triad, and Dean has to watch his daughter for some classic Venture Brothers antics while the Monarch tortures a poor sex worker. It's weird. Another memorable episode that establishes characters that are going to be around for a long fucking while. Season 2, Episode 9, Guess Who's Coming to State Dinner? Gargantua 1 is back, along with its supporting cast, one more time when the Ventures are invited to a dinner at the White House with Manstrong after Gargantua 1 falls from orbit. After some force field mishap, it's also up to Hank and Dean to save the day with the help of Abraham Lincoln's ghost. Yeah, sure. Outside of Gargantua 1 actually falling from orbit, the rest of the episode is pretty inconsequential for the larger story, so it makes a great one-off to put on just kind of whenever. Season 1, Episode 10, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. For the first time, we are really focusing on the mystery of who the Venture twins' brother is when they are kidnapped by one of Rusty's ex-bodyguards in an A-plot. Meanwhile, Killinger is introduced in the B-plot, helping the Monarch to rebuild his relationship with Dr. Girlfriend and returning the cocoon to its former glory. Why is Killinger so great? He's very much characterized as a Lovecraftian Mary Poppins, and it's perfect. Season 1, Episode 11, Viva los Muertos. After Brock leaves another mess of bodies around the Venture compound, the good doctor finally has the idea to revive a few to sell to the military. Great. So Brock has an existential crisis watching one of the bodies he's put under, while a legally distinct mystery incorporated called the Groovy Gang investigate the mysterious science compound they've stumbled upon. This is the first episode I ever caught of the Venture Brothers, and it was the perfect introduction for me. From Discount Scooby-Doo to the big anti-twist at the end of the episode, I really love this episode. It is one of my favorites. Season 2, Episodes 12 and 13, Showdown at Cremation Creek, Parts 1 and 2. The Monarch and Dr. Girlfriend are getting married for the two-part conclusion to the series' second season. Because of a little kidnapping mishap, the Ventures are also entirely in their custody, but no worries, they are just going to have roles in the wedding. Yeah, that's fine. All would have been great if not for Phantom Lim's schemes to both kidnap the new Doctor, Mrs. the Monarch, and kill the Sovereign in one fell swoop. Oh, and Dean and Dr. Orpheus are having their own little nonsensical adventure in the background as well, which I don't love, but it's fine. The conclusion is huge and bombastic, upping the stakes in every way imaginable. One of the rare season finales that doesn't end up feeling like a tragedy. Sure, there's a little cliffhanger with the Monarch and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, but otherwise, it's a pretty happy conclusion for the protagonists. So Season 2 really managed to have its cake and eat it too. I noticed that primarily the Venture family plots are self-contained, while the Monarch's B-plot is the one with real story progression. Not that the characters aren't slowly progressing. Hank and Dean especially get subtle character growth between their deaths at the end of Season 1 and the wedding at the end of Season 2. The whole season just feels bigger across the board. Everything I love from Season 1 is here, just with better animation and a clearer sense of coherence. Phantom Limb, Hunter-Gatherers, the Guild, and the OSI are all expanded on and given way more time to breathe, along with Orpheus always hanging around in the background being spooky, and to be a great contrast to the Doctor. In a series where every season really stands on its own, Season 2 manages to still feel especially important. Season 3, Episode 1, Shadow Man 9 in the Cradle of Destiny. The Season 2 cliffhanger is paid off entirely in this episode, focusing on the Monarch and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch's history with the Guild and Phantom Limb. So no spoiling outside it, continues to expand the Guild of Calamitous Intent with the Council of 13, and is just a really great episode overall. Season 3, Episode 2, The Doctor is Sin. Killinger is back, doing a very similar shtick he did with the Monarch last season, this time with Dr. Venture. Building up the good doctor to turn heel and become a supervillain and arch his younger brother Jonas Jr. If you need to look at an episode to directly describe the themes of this series to you, here be it. Laid out as plain as it will ever be in the series, and just a really fun and interesting episode to watch. Season 3, Episode 3, The Invisible Hand of Fate. Do you need the history of Billy Quizboy and concrete answers to Phantom Limbs? Well, this is your episode. Most of the episode takes place in the past, which gives you some rare pre-Venture Brock in the OSI. We're also busy heavily foreshadowing next season with Sphinx and introducing us to Shore Leave. Season 3, Episode 4, Home is Where the Hate Is. Sergeant Hatred. Sergeant Hatred, who had a bit of backstory in last episode as well, has been assigned as Dr. Venture's new arch-villain. To bring everyone together, he hosts an extremely mid-party with the Monarch and the Avengers all in attendance. It's weird. A great real introduction to the Sergeant with lots of payoffs to jokes that have been laid out throughout the series. One of the first instances of a long joke paying off as well here. Season 3, Episode 5, Buddy System. Much like Super Science Garage Sale, Failed Boy Adventurer Day Camp is one of the best pitches for an episode imaginable, and it delivers, plus the introduction of Dermot and a big old mystery box. Great. Season 3, Episode 6, Dr. Quim, Medicine Woman. The Venture family bump into Rusty's old friend and fellow kid adventurer while in the jungle, giving us a mirrored Venture family with Dr. Quim's daughter, Nancy, and Drew, as well as her bodyguard, Ginny. Except Dr. Quim is genuinely in it for the science, and the girls are only horny for Dean, and Dean wants nothing to do with them, and Hank is being Hank. Normal Venture brother stuff, Season 3, Episode 7... Nope, that's 8. Season 3, Episode 7, What Goes Up Must Come Down. Back in the day, Dr. Venture Sr. up and left a bunch of orphans trapped in his super bunker. With the Doc being lost and Brock stuck in a room with legally distinct Ant-Man, it is time for Orpheus and his co to save the day to the best of their limited abilities. The episode has a lot going for it, but is one that doesn't shine as brightly to me against the rest of early Venture Brothers, but it's still early Venture Brothers and great. Season 3, Episode 8, Tears of the Sea Cow. After the Monarch lost his arching rights to Dr. Venture at the start of the season, we get an episode dedicated to just how much he hates Venture. Sneaking over to vandalize the compound while Dr. Mrs. the Monarch follows behind picking up his mess. The episode has a lot of seemingly inconsequential moments that have big impacts down the line in the series, and some of the best dialogue and most memorable exchanges in the series. Season 3, Episode 9, Now Museum, Now You Don't. Another great concept, bringing together aging and well past their prime heroes and villains for a family reunion of a memorial for Jonas Venture Sr. hosted by the Junior. The clashing personalities of geriatric super retirees with the regular personalities of the series B cast make for an episode that doesn't require the lead Venture family to work, but manages to work perfectly fine all the same. Season 3, Episode 10, The Lepidopterists. The Monarch's new arch has been selected, Jonas Venture Jr. This episode is all about the juxtaposition of Jonas Jr.'s no-nonsense and straightforward approach to the Monarch's classic arching, with the OSI calling Brock in to show Jonas Jr. the arching ropes. It's a great episode that explains the system that the Guild and OSI are a part of. Season 3, Episode 11, The Orb. You'd never guess what they found by the title. A super scientist orb that may or may not destroy the world if opened, While the Doctor and Billy Quizboy go on their adventure, we get flashbacks of the orb's past with the original guild, including past ventures. This episode always feels like another lesser 20 Years to Midnight to me in concept, with a lot more pathos and world building built into the story. It also feels like the thesis of this episode flew kind of over my head in some capacity, but I might just be an idiot. Season 3, Episodes 12 and 13, The Family That Stays Together Slays Together. In the aftermath of Orb, Brock is on the run from 3 of OSI's top-billed assassins, putting Brock and the Venture family truly on the run in a season finale that gives all the weight deserved to the situation at hand. It feels dire and dangerous, and the episode has some of the best action pieces in the series at this point. Part 2 follows up on Part 1, as well as ties in a few plot beats from past few seasons, like the boys' clone army, and without spoiling it here, but I know I will in like 2 minutes when we get into Season 4, this two-parter also ends with the first real shakeups of the series status quo. It's well-earned and well-executed in one of the craziest finales as far as what is actually happening on the screen. I think where the series' third season succeeds most is in pushing the Monarch forward, where the first 2 seasons felt like they very much favored the Venture family, like 70-30. Here it feels more like 50-50, or let's say 55-45. Bringing the Moppets forward as a secondary antagonists in the background for 21 and 24 gave us more weird characters to bounce off of. Season 3, I am sure, has some of the fan community's favorite episodes. I don't think any quite reach that point for me, but that's also because it's spending a lot of its time planting seeds for the long haul at this point. Season 4, Episode 1, Blood of the Father, Heart of Steel. The direct aftermath of the Season 3 finale is told out of sequence, reintroducing us to the first real updated costume since the series' debut. This episode also feels like a soft reboot of the series with a slightly different Venture family, something we'll see again in a few seasons. Season 4, Episode 3, Preence to Dean. A rejected Dean clone has been living in one of the many nooks and crannies of the Venture compound, making his own meat suit of dead Deans like, sane people do. Dermot is back to help Hank grow as a character and to be a dick to hatred for a really darkly fun episode. Season 4, Episode 4, Return to Malice. The big return for Henchman 21, which will very much guide the character going forward as he becomes a genuine unit in his own right in the wake of the death of 24 at the end of last season. He kidnaps the Venture brothers, which leads to everyone else on a search for the boys behind enemy lines, where of course the boys are absolutely not. Season 4, Episode 5, The Revenge Society. Here we have the reintroduction of Phantom Limb. Absolutely insane and following up on the Orb episode that I didn't love from last season. Also the introduction of Red Mantle and Dragoon. The pair become some of my favorite side characters throughout the series with their Statler and Waldorf routine, really. Season 4, Episode 6, Self-Medication. Every season has one of those perfect concept episodes, and Retired Boy Adventurer Therapy is one of those. Bringing back Legally Distinct Johnny Quest and Dr. Z, the start of a resurgence for the Bad Doctor, honestly. The episode is also filled with great guest stars that get to just really steal the show. Season 4, Episode 7, The Better Man. We finally meet Dr. Orpheus's ex-wife's new boyfriend in Outrider when he saves Orpheus and the Order of the Triad from near death. And this isn't her last appearance, but it is more or less the end of Triana's story with Dean. It's also just a fun story to focus on the Triad. Great stuff that is both largely self-contained and pushes Dean's larger narrative forward. Season 4, Episode 8. Pinstripes and Poltergeists. The Monarch accidentally signs over his arching rights to Dr. Venture to the first major appearance of Monstroso, and Brock returns in a big way in the B-plot, reintroducing us to Sphinx with MVP Shore Leave. A great way to give us a lot more Brock at once to make up for him missing so much of this season. Season 4, Episode 9, The Diving Bell vs. the Butter Glider. Who doesn't love a Fantastic Voyage parody? A time-honored animated adventure staple. While that's the Venture A-plot, the Monarch dry humps a Green Goblin glider until the henchmen go on strike. This episode has some of my favorite jokes in the entire series, especially, this season. Everything with the boys in the submarine is perfect. Season 4, Episode 10, Pomp and Circuitry. The Venture brothers have graduated from bed school. Well, Dean, anyway. So while Rusty shows him a college and miraculously fails, Hank tries to join Sphinx and miraculously succeeds. Plus, Phantom Limb is furthering his story in the background, and an all-around fun episode that doesn't stand out a ton, especially with the 2 episodes that come after next. Season 4, Episode 11, Any Which Way But Zeus. We have built the universe up to a degree where we can pretty much entirely focus on building up the side characters like Billy Quizboy and Shore Leave in a kidnapping plot, while the Ventures become a C plot to the capital B Brock plot that is hilariously pointless, but is hugely on theme for the series as a whole, with some great Brockisms that continue to make up for his missing in the first half of the season. Season 4, Episode 12, Everybody Come to Hank's. You can tell we had so many ideas for the episode Pomp and Circuitry that we split the idea into 3 episodes, giving us an entire episode dedicated to Hank blissfully walking through life in a series of startup businesses to a noir backdrop with one of the least comedic and most impactful scenes in the series. Season 4, Episode 13, Bright Lights, Dean City. Dean's dedicated episode continues to follow Dean taking the traditional young adult route of internships in college. Just, super science theme. Oh, and Dr. Venture is here too to make Dean's life miserable. Season 4, Episode 14, Assisted Suicide. The Monarch is using evil super science to control Dr. Venture's mind in a series of great attempted suicides. So we send Orpheus into the sad doctor's mindscape to treat with every aspect of Rusty's personality. The episode commentary reveals that this A-plot was originally the B-plot for Episode 9, the Fantastic Voyage parody, and I almost wish the episodes were put back-to-back in the lineup, or this was some kind of Inner Reachings of Inner Mindscape special. It would have been, I think, a lot better presented, but that's just me. Season 4, Episode 15, The Silent Partners. Throughout the series, there have been these creepy guys popping up in the background, being menacing and, well, silent. The episode takes its time to flush them out with an episode dedicated to them and Billy Quizboy of all the side characters, also giving Pete White some room to grow in a fun episode that sets things up for Operation Prom. Season 4, Episode 16, Operation Prom. The season finale goes hard, giving us an hour-long special, if you watched it with the original commercial breaks, that could pass for a series finale with the amount of pathos and weight given to the entire episode. This episode wraps up a few storylines that have been building for a few seasons and leaves just about everyone in a place that feels like progression for the characters. The entire episode is fittingly about the Venture Brothers homeschool prom. The acronym doesn't stand for anything important, not even as a joke. And with an hour, nearly every single side character of significance gets at least 2 moments to shine, and Brock especially gets his time in the sun this episode with an amazing extended action chase sequence. We also get lots more of the Monarch being the Monarch, while 24 finally asks the Necromancer in the room for help with his dead friend. So Season 4, I love that Doc Hammer and Jackson Public got to split so many great ideas into their own episodes this season. It feels like the network saw the previous season as some sort of highlight ratings-wise and let the duo go a little crazy here. I do wish a few of the episodes that were split into 2 were released as specials instead, especially Diving Bell and the Butter Glider with Assisted Suicide. The 2 episodes being released so far apart means the pair of episodes kind of lose their magic versus technology metaphor in comparison to Hank and Dean's solo episodes. The season as a whole introduces both a ton of elements that will be super important going forward as far as the series lore is concerned, while at the same time not throwing a bunch of mystery boxes at the audience's faces to keep everyone from pulling their hair out for years at a time. Overall, I find that Season 4 balances everything that the series is about better than any that came before, really, for the most part anyway. Everybody gets a moment to shine throughout the entire season, and again, it ends up on a really high note. If someone told me that the series was intended to end after Season 4, I would have absolutely believed them. This special is that good. From the Ladle to the Grave, the Shallow Gravy Story. A really quick short done in a VH1 behind the music documentary editing style, using all the animation techniques of the first few Venture Brothers seasons, if you are a fan of that more traditional rough animation style of those early seasons. I love anything that is just presented as in-universe pieces of media, so this is especially fun for me, as well as just being really funny. A Very Venture Halloween. This special is more so an essential episode shown out of sequence. Actually, the entire episode takes place between the nights in the next episode, What Color Is Your Clean Suit? Dean learns about his clonage here, Orpheus has a Halloween party that wakes all the dead henchmen Brock has left buried on the compound grounds, and Doc and Vadrid hilariously gamble whether kids will make it to the doorbell. Season 5, Episode 1, What Color Is Your Clean Suit? We're back, baby! Biggest carryover from last season is the character progression of Hank and Dean, as well as Gary sticking to his gumptions. Although he doesn't get a ton to do this double-length episode, otherwise this does feel a lot more like Season 4, which I love. We are also ramping up in the sense of the Doc's desperation, though. He's starting to sell off more and more shit to the longest-seated unnamed character in the series' longtime unknown rival, Billy Quizboy. Oh, and he accidentally started a little Thunderdome of unpaid college interns on the compound, and some great foreshadowing to all of this in Gargantua 2. Season 5, Episode 2, Venture Libre. Did you miss the old format of episodes where the Venture family goes on a failed adventure with a ton of nods to Johnny Quest? Well, here you go. With the return of MVP Venturestein. What's great about this episode is it really is a classic Venture story with the new current Venture family, which is an entirely different dynamic than what we had in the first few seasons. Season 5, Episode 3, Sphinx Rising. A great episode for Gary to shine and just be Gary, doing his best to revive the organization he was left the keys to, and succeeding in all the wrong ways. Gary really does kick ass this episode throughout, successfully taking down a few villains single-handedly and really stepping up to set things right with Brock, because we always need more Brock. Season 5, Episode 4, Spanakopita! One of my favorite episodes, and it has almost nothing to do with the series' larger narrative. Just the Venture B team, Doc, Sergeant Batrid, Billy, and Pete, trying to have a vacation on some random Greek island and being harassed by Augustus St. Cloud. The episode is both inconsequential and has a genuine meaning that I love. Season 5, Episode 5, OSI Love You. We are finally following up on all the questions left by Operation Prom as we recapture Monstroso and Coxey's, only for everything to really fall apart, shown from the beginning of the episode with the setup being the Venture cast in a series of interrogations about the events. Season 5, Episode 6, Mama's Boys. This is the episode that both wraps up a few loose ends about the Venture brothers' mother and opens up a few new ones. It also has an amazing follow-up to the Ted bit from Any Which Way But Zeus. Oh, and a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest bit done pretty tastefully. Season 5, Episode 7, Bot Seeks Bot. Low-key setting up some of the most important moments of Season 6 and 7 while also walking directly into the season finale. We follow Brock and the OSI sending a robot superhero into a supervillain club to spy on the Council of 13, which means Doc wants to tag along and just make things complicated. Season 5, Episode 8, The Devil's Grip. Picking up immediately where Bot Seeks Bot ended, this episode never particularly felt like a season finale to me, mostly because that's never what it was supposed to be, I guess. But I would rather have this be the season finale over getting a rushed All This in Gargantua 2, which really revived the series for a lot of people, me included. The episode is about the Venture family's bug-out plan if Doc died, by the way. It is fun on its own, but again, it's trying to prop up the series as a finale, and it isn't quite there. So Season 5, I do have a bone to pick with Season 5's DVD. There is not good excuse for including all of the specials out of order. Not only out of order, but slapping them at the end of the play all function of Disc 2 when their rightful place is at the beginning of Disc 1. It's a pretty common thing with companies being confused with what to do with specials outside of the normal episode count, but this is the first time I'm really getting to talk about it, so... Overall, you can really see this is where the financiers stopped having as much faith in the series, unfortunately. Not only is the episode count cut, but the series lacks the big action-packed finale that the other seasons have because of it. In spite of this season has some of the most fun episodes in the entire series. I love What Color Is Your Clean Suit, Spanakopita, and Mama's Boys especially. We even get a finale to 24's murder subplot in Season 5. There is just so much crammed into this short season. All this in Gargantua 2. So this was the planned Season 5 finale. That definitely makes sense. This feels more on par and in scope and even more grandiose than Operation Prom, but equally works as an opener or in between for the series revamp we have coming. The special itself is all about tying up as many loose ends as possible, and Jonas Venture Jr., who's been sitting out the last few seasons, launches an ultimately doomed Ocean Gate-esque space station named after the station in which his father died. The biggest loose ends this special ties up, the investors, JJ, the Revenge Society, and several of their members, General Traster, and the Sovereign, while giving us at least one moment for everyone to poke their head in just to remind us they exist. Season 6, Episode 1, Hostile Makeover. The series did a perfect little revamp in a post-Avengers world. We followed the Venture family move to New York after the destruction of the compound and the death of JJ in the previous special. Basically reintroducing us to the characters and how they've grown, plus telling us how we got Brock back amongst the main crew. Oh, and the Monarch lost all the rights to Arch Dr. Venture because of guild politics. Season 6, Episode 2, Maybe No Go. The Monarch and 21 begin their little quest to regain the rights to Arch Dr. Venture. Hank and Brock each get new love interests with ties to the superpowered community, while Billy and Pete get a side quest with St. Cloud in order to put them back in the Venture family in New York. I kinda wish Billy and Pete's story got bumped up to its own dedicated episode because it thematically feels really heavy but takes away from the important narrative elements and the other two story beats, I think. But it's still a great episode. Season 6, Episode 3, Faking Miracles. This episode is all about expanding the new cast of New York villains and giving us a little more of the heroes we were introduced to at the beginning of this season. Copycat, who had a really quick cameo in all of this in Gargantua 2, makes a really big play here that makes great use of his powers to fuck over the Monarch, who also had his world expanded on in this episode with more Blue Morpho shenanigans. Season 6, Episode 4, Rhapsody in Blue. You couldn't guess by the title, but a lot more Blue Morpho this episode. Kind of finally getting the Monarch to his second act of the season where he fully accepts the mantle and starts accidentally killing supervillains. The Avengers are more in the background this episode as the Doc plays around with Billy and Pete to make a new super drug to bite them in the ass, and Hank gets a supervillain girlfriend. How cute. Season 6, Episode 5, Tanks for Nothing. Brock gets a whole relationship with our legally distinct Wonder Woman of the Venture world that we were introduced to at the beginning of this season after Doc's new arch, played by the wonderful, as always, Jeffrey Wright, is just so beautifully disappointed by not being challenged by Rusty Venture's lack of intellect. We also get a little of great world building for Dean now that he's in college. Season 6, Episode 6, It Happened One Night. A supervillain gang called Doom, with an exclamation point, shows up at the Venture building and just confuses the Venture patriarch by throwing a party, stroking his ego, and stealing his shit. Brock is MIA because he is chasing Hank on his first date with Serena, again, daughter of one of the lead supervillains introduced this season. Plus, the Monarch is being the Blue Morpho in his own C-plot, so this episode is just jokes and story progression, and it's really fantastic. Also, if you love Scare Bear, listen to this episode's commentary for the character's original backstory. Season 6, Episode 7, A Party for Tarzan. The Guild is getting ready to kill whoever they think is the Blue Morpho, except it's the good Dr. Venture who lifted the Monarch suit from the dry cleaners to throw a party for Christopher Lambert, while 21 is continuing to be the best little henchman dealing with the Monarch's rivals. Season 6, Episode 8, Red Means Stop. The Season 6 finale brings in one of the last new major players in the series with Red Death, who is just the best example of the use of juxtaposition for comedy that has ever come to memory. The whole episode is about the Monarch trying and failing to stand up to Red Death since he is now next in line to arch the Venture family, and the Ventures being brought in on a sting operation to catch the Blue Morpho. Season 6. So I know I said it before, but this was the perfect revamp for the Venture Brothers in a world that has seen the Battle of New York and the Avengers and the MCU. I personally will always miss the compound and don't necessarily think the season needed to move to New York to stay interesting, but it also did let the creators go absolutely wild with new ideas in which they could expand the world. This season is funny as ever and only pushes the subtle storylines forward along with the major ones like the Blue Morpho, Hank's relationship with a supervillain Harris, and the Doctor failing at falling up like he always does. Red Means Stop is also just a great episode to end the season on, even if again it wasn't intended to be the finale. Season 7, Episodes 1, 2, and 3, The Venture Brothers and the Curse of the Haunted Problem, The Rockrell Affair, and Arrears in Science. Knowing that this was supposed to be the last season's finale and should have been at the very least a special like all of this in Gargantua 2 makes so much sense with the amount of revelations and big drops this trio of episodes contains. It appropriately feels like the finale of Season 6, but does also work as well as the intro for Season 7. So do you remember the problem light all the way back from Season 1? Well, that's been harboring a secret for pretty much the entire series. We only learn about it now that it is, for all intents and purposes, haunting the Venture Tower. So of course Dean calls Dr. Orpheus to check things out while Hank continues his courtship with the crime boss's daughter by joining his ranks as Enrico Matassa, his most recent alter ego that we saw once before 2 seasons ago in Mama's Boys. Through all of this, the Monarch, of course, has a literal gun onto his head because, of course, 21 slept through his alarm, and a lot of the Blue Morpho plot comes to peak when suddenly another Blue Morpho rocks in on the old plot because of the long hole that Jackson Public and Doc Hammer have been seeding for years at this point is finally paying off, and for what me is both the Season 6 finale and the Season 7 opener simultaneously. Season 7, Episode 4, The High Cost of Loathing. Focusing a little little more on the Monarch and his re-rise through the ranks of the Guild after essentially having his Blue Morpho subplot drop for him thanks to his daddy in the Season 6/7 finale/opener. This episode does a lot with Dean's characters hitting bigger bits for the end of the season as well. Season 7, Episode 5, The Inamorata Consequence. This, for me, is the last great super high concept episode of the series, and it is pretty unique to this show and this show only. The closest analogy would have to be, it's essentially Dr. Venture negotiating a peace conference between Marvel's S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, but with the OSI and the Guild of Calamitous Intent. Oh, and Dean gets another Halloween special's worth of revelations here. It's pretty great. Season 7, Episode 6, The Bellicose Proxy. This episode feels way more like the early Venture Brothers, if that makes sense. And it's entirely about the Monarch and Dr. Venture having a dick measuring contest under the guise of the Monarch being a part of the Big Brother program for Level 1 villain Augustus St. Cloud and his arching of Billy Quizboy at Bentech Tower. Season 7, Episode 7, The Unicorn in Captivity. I love teleporter shenanigans. And here is absolutely no difference. After Billy invents the thing, we both get an amazing heist and action sequence as the Monarch joins a crew to heist the teleporter while Brock gets to do the thing people love seeing Brock do most. While the Good Doctor is sent to an Eyes Wide Shut parody for good measure, it's one of my favorites this season, right under the Inamorata Consequence. Season 7, Episode 8, The Terminus Mandate. This episode is more dedicated to the Guild Council and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, and how the Monarch himself deals with the full realization that she is going to be transitioning to the Guild full-time, even more so than before. It's also just a great fun episode to watch the Guild, some of the best side characters, shine, while Dr. Venture and the Monarch flounder when the spotlight just isn't on them. Season 7, Episode 9, The Forecast Manufacturer. A rival guild called the Peril Partnership that's been seeded all season has their own little rogue faction that stole guild tech to give the Ventures, or in this case Doc and Billy Quizboy, a good old-fashioned adventure to save the day while the Monarch is sent on a mission to assassinate the Root, and Hank also has like major revelations here. I also just always forget Hank caused his own head injury this episode. God damn it, Hank, you aren't a clone anymore. You gotta take care of yourself. Season 7, Episode 10, The Saphirax Protocol. The Monarch goes through a legally distinct Masonic ritual to become a level 10 villain, which included the kidnapping of Dr. Venture from Brock, so Brock is being his best self all episode. Dean has been off with Hank since the end of last episode, and I don't really want to spoil it, so I won't. But there are also a lot of great fever dream shenanigans here. Not the big finale we always wanted, but this episode would end up being a pretty big cliffhanger to end the series on. So Season 7. Holy shit. Watching everything in a straight line from beginning to end, there is a beautifully clear and consistent progression in quality from Season 1 to now, both in the animation as well as in the overall storytelling. Maybe it's because over the years their universe has gradually become so big that Doc and Jackson cannot contain everything anymore, so it just feels tighter, but this season feels especially tight. Even a high-concept episode like Inamorata Consequence drops huge reveals for Rusty while doing great character and world building. I should take this time to say more about the series, but instead this is going to be just a sincere thank you to Doc, Hammer, and Jackson Public for all the work they put into the series, and although I had no sway in the decision, being a putz with no association with Adult Swim or whoever might have had the authority to cancel the series, but I am so very sorry that the Venture Brothers was done dirty by being canceled the way it was. And if there's anyone listening to this video who is in a position to give the writers and producers more work, please find out how to do so, because I would watch whatever they worked on next in a heartbeat. 2023's The Venture Brothers, Radiant is the blood of the Baboon heart. So finally sitting down to watch this pretty much immediately after an extended watch through of the entire series is well worth it. I recommend it highly. The finale movie splits its time between 4 plots primarily, wrapping up Hank's runaway cliffhanger, his being tracked by Dean and the Order of the Triad, the Doc and the Monarch casually talking about the revelations from the end of Season 7 while dealing with a super science mishap, and finally Dr. Mrs. the Monarch handling guild drama with a rival group called Arch. What should have been a whole season is essentially cropped to 4 episodes worth of time. It does use its time to answer the series' most important questions, But what is left out is a lot of the fun side characters and their bits that made the series so memorable and stand out from the beginning here. This movie is animated really well and probably significantly better than any of the later seasons, looking especially crisp on the Blu-ray Uncensored. The performances are equally on point. Patrick Warburton's delivery being maybe the best of the entire series also makes up for Brock not having a ton to do this movie. Doc Hammer I also think pulls through as Dr. Mrs. the Monarch in the finale, especially when put side by side with like Clancy Brown, who continues to be amazing as Clancy Brown. 1981's Sharky's Machine. So this is the last thing that Jonas Venture Sr. saw before he was sucked out into the cold vacuum of space and subsequently shattered while being put back into the problem. I mean, the first 80 seconds of the movie are pretty okay noir filler, a legally distinct Dirty Harry, if you will. And Burt Reynolds is not a bad director here by any means, especially the title character's interrogation late into the movie was done particularly well, and I really hate the villain of this movie. But the scope of the production feels a little beyond its means, especially when it comes to the pacing. How does it relate to the Venture Brothers? I mean, according to one of the commentaries, Doc and Jackson just thought it would be exactly the kind of shitty movie Jonas Venture would have on VHS at the time, and they really liked the opening song for the show. And we are going to end our discussion on the Venture Brothers. What all are your favorite episodes and story beats? Unpulled threads in Venture Brothers lore, or threads you think were dropped too soon? Rest in peace, Baron Underbite. Next month we are focusing on the first few feature-length animated features that Disney produced, the Golden Era. So if I am your proverbial cup of tea, look forward to those on the first and third Fridays in March. Also, I am really bad at self-promotion. I started a second channel at the start of this year for a very different project of mine, in which I am narrating an ongoing science fiction adventure of my own making. Every Monday through Friday I am reading out a full page, and right now we should be 7 or 8 or so chapters in, or at least that is how far I've narrated at the time of recording. So if a post-apocalypse science fantasy adventure sounds like your kind of weird, please check out Entry Mayan. A link will be in the video description to that channel. Otherwise, please keep on being amazing and do some good today.